Credo Voices, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Awele Okibo, the CEO of Credo Advisory. Millions of people in Africa live in extreme poverty without access to reliable sources of food. According to Action Against Hunger, 264 million people face hunger in sub-Saharan Africa. UNICEF has called for support to accelerate humanitarian assistance efforts to avert famine and child deaths. There is an estimated 1.5 million children at risk of severe acute malnutrition, which can be fatal if left untreated. But yes, I know these statements corroborate the recurring narrative around Africa, but this is different. This is not about perpetuating the doom and gloom of Africa. It's in fact the complete opposite. Thanks to my next guest, today's podcast is a good news story about progress coming out of the region and the solution to Africa's hunger crises. This is about driving Sustainable Development Goal 2. Zero hunger. This episode, we're traveling to Johannesburg, South Africa, where my guest is empowering people and shifting communities from charity to self-reliance. This is Isak, in his own words, sharing his story. Let's listen and be inspired. Today, I have Isak Pretorius, and I'd love for you to hear about his journey, the important work he's doing in Africa. Isak, welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you. Really a privilege.
So, according to the Global Report on Food Crises, at least 1 in 5 Africans go to bed hungry. An estimated 140 million people in Africa face acute food insecurity. Tell me, what is ForAfrika doing to address this food crisis? Tell me about your work.
Yeah, so as ForAfrika, we are incredibly involved in what we call food security programs. Now, that's sounds like an elaborate term, but what food security is about is it's actually about everything that revolves around food, the provision of food, as well as the ability to actually grow your own food. And so, we look at this challenge and we say, how do we address this? And we have to address it in a multifaceted way. So, some people will say to me, oh, but I've seen some of what you do and it looks like you're giving a fish, because we will fill a bowl of food in a feeding program. Other times we will be providing, food rations that we distribute to people. And they'll say, it looks like you're giving a fish. If you give a fish, you feed a man for a day. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And I appreciate what they're saying. And I really appreciate where they're coming from. And what I explain to them is, well, as for Africa, we're actually doing both. Because as Africans from this continent that really understand and know our continent, that have staff that come from the very communities that we're serving in and are serving their own communities, their own nations, as we all come together as Africans and serve our continent as ForAfrika, we've come to really understand that sometimes there's a need to give a fish. Because if the person you're teaching to fish starves to death before they learn how, then what have we achieved? We've wasted the fishing training fees, and more importantly, we've wasted the life. And so sometimes what we do as ForAfrika is that we actually provide direct food assistance. This is normally in cases of emergency where it is impossible for a community at that time to develop and grow the foods that they need and meet their own food needs. So that's a temporary fix for us. And so that is all about being able to stabilize. And so what you'll hear me talk about is a couple of things as we go through this, but the first of which is stabilizing. So in everything we do, whether that be food in this instance or water or any of that activities, the first step is stabilization. because it's in that space, normally in emergencies, where we are doing the life-saving efforts and saving lives. But what we do in food goes way beyond that. And so we go from stabilizing by very often providing that food to restoring. And what is restoring? Restoring effectively is about building back better. And so, as for Africa, we engage with communities right from day one to say, what's your plan? How do we help you to refine and improve that plan if needed? And then, how do we bring the resources to your plan to not just stabilize, but then to restore and help you build back better? And building back better then leads us into this place of really coming to some level of sustainability, which for us is more of a journey of restoration. So it continues way beyond that point to where we reach a regenerative state. And this is now where communities are actually providing for themselves, able to grow their own food or to produce what's needed to be able to ensure that they have the food that they need within those communities. And so they're now actually this is something that becomes a perpetual cycle. And so we've broken the cycle of poverty here, the cycle of a desperate food insecurity, where these statistics show that people are severely food insecure or, in worst case scenario, dying of malnutrition or starvation. But then we look to go beyond that even and continue as we work hand in hand with these communities to see true transformation. And so we go from this regenerative state to a state of true transformation in the community, which is where those communities are thriving. And food insecurity, as you've just described, that is far behind them and something that should never be in their future again, because we've created the ability to thrive.
That's phenomenal, Isaac. It's really good to hear that you have a community driven, community based approach for sustainability. But how do you determine a particular community is ready to start being almost self sufficient? I'd imagine data, this has to be dependent on data. So, at what stage does For Africa determine that you transition from the provision of food, which which you've explained has been happening along with the training? So, you're giving them the fish and you're also training them how to catch the fish. How do you determine when to stop giving them?
Yeah, and I mean, I love this question because herein lies one of the great challenges. But herein also lies one of the great strengths of For Africa. And I say this um, not from a self-promotion perspective, or it's just a genuine truth, and that is that we are part of the fabric of these communities. So we don't go to a community and deliver a service. We become a part of the community. So For Africa is a part of the fabric of these communities. We will have team on the ground that many times come from that very community or from the surrounding communities. They understand the local environment. They're fully plugged into the community. And so, yes, it's data driven. Okay. We make data driven decisions because those are accurate decisions, but it's not only data driven. We're a part of that community. We're living and breathing with them. We speak their language. We dream their dreams, we often say. But the truth is that we actually feel what they feel. And we experience the journey together. And so, what that allows us to do is to bring the combination of data and actually seeing, feeling, being a part of. It's kind of like saying, would you know, really, when it's time to transition your child from maybe nursing to solid foods?
Wow.
You're going to get
Wow.
advice. Of course, you're going to read up about it. You're going to get advice. You're going to use data. But at the end of the day, you will be the best person to make that decision as a mother because you know inside your gut why, because you're connected to your child.
That is a powerful analogy. Wow. And this is a very different model from what a lot of the development partners and some of these development and donors, their own approach. While as well intentioned as it can be, it's really insightful that For Africa is not just a service provider, but it's actually it's really infused itself in a community where the community feels that they are actually solving their own problems. And it also kind of raises the issue of, are you trying to create dependence, or do you want people to actually take their own destiny into their own hands? Are they actually solving their problem? So it's so good to hear that For Africa is doing that. But then, can you just, you've painted such an incredible picture of the work on ground. Can you give us more images around women, children? How do you involve children in this?
Yeah, so I mean, children are a fundamental core of who we are, and our hearts beat for the children of Africa. I mean, that's at the center of the heart of For Africa is the children of our continent, and so a lot of what we do is built around direct or indirect service to those children, and directly or indirectly impacting the current or future of those children's lives. So children are absolutely critical to us. Women, of course, are. I mean, they are our number one partner. Okay,
I'd
I can
imagine.
honestly say that to you.
Exactly.
Okay, I mean, you know the
Yeah.
context. Come on, we fellow Africans here talking about our
Yes,
continent. Okay,
yes,
you know
absolutely.
this. Okay, the woman of Africa. I mean, my dad used to say, "Are you man enough to be an African woman?" Okay, and
Wow.
he what he meant by that was, we you go watch women across our continent. You see how hard they work. You see what they sacrifice. You see what they do each and every day to ensure the survival, the sustainability, and the thriving of their families. And they will sacrifice anything, and they will give anything, and they will work tirelessly. And so, because of that, women across our continent are our number one partner. And so we work hand in hand with the women of the communities. We listen to them. One of the beautiful things I've had happen a number of times. I love sitting under, and again, you're going to get this. I love sitting under a tree with a community, okay, um, and just having a conversation, just understanding, where you at, what's happening, what's going on, and you listen to the women of the community, and they tell you these beautiful stories, the stories of struggle, the stories of lack, but also the stories of how they plan to solve those challenges,
Right.
and the stories of what they're going to do when they solve them. And it's amazing to me that I've never had one of those experiences where I've sat with a woman anywhere in any of the communities we're working in on our continent who said, and then I'm going to become richer, and then I'm going to have more, and then it's always, and then my children. It's always about how the community is going to develop, how the community is going to prosper, how the family is going to, and how ultimately thriving comes about. And so, because of that, women are a fundamental partner. Yes, I'd love to share a story with you about Florence. Florence Aikuru is the most amazing woman. She's Sudanese. It was then Sudan, would now be considered South Sudan, where she was. And during the war, she was forced to actually leave. She became a refugee in northern Uganda, and so she was living in a refugee. But Florence believed that there was more for her and for her people, for her community. And she said to me, she said, education and business is the solution. She said, I knew that was the solution. She said, and I had nothing. I didn't have anything. So what I did was I started my own NGO to be able to train women and to equip them and empower them to be able to have their own businesses and to produce for their families. And the first part of the story I just loved context. This is somebody who had to flee their country, was a refugee who admittedly said, I had nothing. So what did I do? I started something. Okay, this is the power of African women, okay, and the vision. And so Florence starts this. Now, I'm going to fast forward, okay, to where we are today. Florence is one of our key partners. So part of how For Africa works, direct partnership with the community, but we also work with local community-based organizations, local NGOs, etc., as key partners in our work. So Florence and her organization are one of those partners. And Florence runs the most incredible organization. And today we're able to partner. And what we're doing is we're taking 200 women at a time. Now, Florence is based back in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. She's back in her country. And we take 200 women in at a time. And the women select one of 5 channels that they want to be trained in. And so I'll just use one example. One of the ladies I met was training as a tailor. She had received all of her training, and then when she's finished her training, she actually gets the equipment, the sewing machine, etc., some of the inputs that she needs to start her business. And then Florence has secured contracts to make school uniforms or prison uniforms or various different things. And so Florence then is able to take all of these graduates who are now starting in their own businesses, the hardest time in a business, that startup phase. They've got the equipment they need, they've got the capital in the sense of the inputs, and they've got a secure contract that they're supplying into, and they've got a mentor in Florence and her team that continue to mentor them. These ladies don't fail. They end up, I met many of them who were in, the last or 2 or 3 intakes ago, who are now running successful businesses. Okay. I mean, one lady said to me, she said, I now get to pay my children's school fees. I get to buy my own shoes for my children. I get to, and she was just bragging about what she gets to do as a result of having this successful business. Such an incredible model. I can't take credit for it. For Africa can't take credit for it. It's Florence. We just came alongside Florence and helped resource what she was doing. That is the power of African women. And in fact, well, that is the power of our continent. And these are the stories we need to be telling. Our continent is not a basket case for charity. Our continent is not just statistics about food insecurity. Yes, those things exist. But our continent is a continent made up of millions and millions and millions of Florences. And if we will just bring the resource alongside those Florences, we will transform this continent. And I believe will become the next superpower.
Now, Isaac, how did you get started? I know that you come from a family of, social entrepreneurs. Can you just share a little bit about, what has influenced your perspective on humanitarian work? How did you start this from the very beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my mom and dad started this. So 40 years ago next year. And they're they're 2 of the most incredible people. They're my heroes, both of them, because they are the Africans we've just been talking about. My dad grew up extremely poor, stealing milk from different houses where the milk van would drop it off in the mornings here in Johannesburg, um, stealing water from the neighbor every night because their water had been cut off. Um, you know, as he would say, he used to say, I was never a criminal. He said, but I did steal a lot because that was the only way to keep our family alive. He was a teenager at that stage. So he understood poverty and he promised himself he was never going to be poor again in his life. And so he worked incredibly hard and he achieved that goal. He had 2 experiences. He had a life transforming experience where he really had an encounter with God that transformed his life as he would describe it spiritually. And then he had an experience in Mozambique where, long story short, he got stuck in an IDP camp and he helped bury more than 300 people. And it transformed his life. And that was the founding of For Africa. And so initially just founded as an emergency response to a crisis in Mozambique in the early 1980s. And it just grew and morphed and evolved. My dad was a businessman, so he took a business approach to doing things. He was an African, so he took an African approach to doing them. And it just grew over time. My personal experience, I grew up around it. The most privileged upbringing, I say. So people picture a silver spoon when I say that. No. My privileged upbringing was during my school vacations. I would get in the plane with my dad and go work in a refugee camp somewhere in Africa, or, something like that. And I got to experience our continent and the richness of people and the tragedy of our challenges. And so I went to business school and then I worked for my dad for 13 years. And then I decided that humanitarian relief and development was not going to change our continent. Building economies and business was going to. And so I left the NGO and I personally spent 11 years building some businesses in the investment banking sort of space, as well as operational businesses, mainly in agriculture, and really looked to actually be able to help develop the continent from a business perspective and help build and stimulate economy. And then when my father passed away in 2018, I got very much more involved with ForAfrika again. Well, and I I really saw that actually the solution wasn't the non-profit or humanitarian or development work, and neither was the solution the for-profit commercial work either. Actually, what I started to see is that the real solution is when we can bring those two together. Because actually, a lot of the statistics that are negative on our continent exist in the chasm between those two worlds. And so, if we can bring those together, and instead of being about being for profit or not for profit, we can actually be about being for good and
Right.
have a long term commitment that says we want to be a part of a community forever. People say to me, what is ForAfrika's exit strategy? And I say, we don't have one. And that's a bad answer many times in our industry. Okay. They say, what do you mean you don't have an exit strategy? I said, let me explain to you. Okay. All of our projects have exit strategies. ForAfrika doesn't have one
Wow.
because you don't leave home.
Oh my
And Africa is
goodness.
home. So
Yes.
why would we leave? I dream of the day where we're providing banking services, insurance, whatever it is, and there's no need for any of our humanitarian or development work. I dream of that day. But that doesn't mean for Africa is not going to be around. We'll still
Yes.
be there, still be partnering with the community, providing what is relevant to the community at that time. And so that's kind of our inception and our journey as succinctly as I
Oh,
can
it's
communicate it to
so
you.
insightful. But can you give us just a sense of your footprint across Africa? What countries are you in? And just give us a sense of some of the impact. How many communities have you been able to impact, and how many programs have you rolled out?
Yeah, so we're reasonably broadly spread. We're nowhere near where we want to be. We would love to be in every African country. We're currently in South Africa, Mozambique, Angola, South Sudan, Rwanda, Uganda, Central African Republic, Ethiopia. I think I've covered all of the ones we're busy looking to expand into DRC Congo, and we've just registered in Tanzania and Kenya. So looking to expand programs into those areas. We last year, I'll give you last year's numbers because I can stand behind those fully. So last year, we provided direct assistance to 3.1, it was like 3,120 some thousand people that we provided direct assistance to. And that was across communities in all of those countries, across all of the different pillars of intervention. So it may have been emergencies or
Wow.
food or water or education or health or economic empowerment. And but here's where we're going. Okay, so we used to measure impact by saying how many people are we reaching with how many different programs across what we do. We are making a massive shift as ForAfrika to say an Africa that thrives, which is our vision, is only going to be attainable if we are able to truly partner with communities in their journey of transformation. And so this is directing a lot more of our focus. And part of that has been that we have shifted our primary goal. So our overarching goal for this year, so we have a goal to reach 4 million people with direct assistance this year. But actually, That's not the goal that's most important to us. The goal that's most important is that 250,000 people will be able to sustainably provide for themselves by the end of this year because of our interventions over the last number of years. And that translates into our 10-year goal. So our 10-year goal is that by 2032, because it started last year, by 2032, that 20 million people in Africa will have been empowered to sustainably provide for themselves through our activities, because we believe that's impact. Okay, impact is being able to sustainably provide for yourself, and that then leads into impact phase 2, which is about regeneration and about thriving.
What challenges do you envision having to achieve those goals? For instance, during COVID, I can only imagine how difficult it was, being that you are in these communities. How do you overcome these challenges? How were you able, and we can use COVID as the example, how were you able to still provide that support in the face of COVID? And then can you also share what are some of the challenges you generally have doing this work in finding the right partners, funding, training? I'd be very interested in hearing about
Many a challenge. So
that.
we as an organization choose to not see challenges. I think as Africans, we have to have that. We don't see challenges, we see opportunities to
Opportunities,
overcome
yes.
the challenges. But there are many. Okay. But I'll maybe talk to your first question, or first part of the question first, and that is COVID. I mean, COVID was devastating to our continent in many ways. Not so much from the loss of life, which of course was devastating, but actually, if you look at our
The number,
continent, I'm quite
yes,
proud of how we
yes,
handled
yes,
COVID. We
absolutely,
really managed it well, and we
yes.
limited the loss of lives from directly from COVID. The challenge is that COVID impacted us economically hugely as a continent. Okay. And so it set back the continent in many ways. So if you look at the food security data you were talking about, you know, far more people food insecure post COVID than pre COVID. Now, we were bringing those numbers down. I say we, not just for Africa, the whole global community, we're bringing those numbers down year on year and having a real success there. And then COVID hit and those numbers went back up. Now we're starting to turn that curve again. So COVID had a significant impact, loss of jobs, increased poverty statistics, etc. Part of the challenge was that, I was just with the Minister of Education for South Sudan, and she said this. She said, for 2 years, nobody went to school. And that just hit me when she said it. I was like, that probably for Africa, or at least let's talk South Sudan, because that's the statistic on South Sudan. That was probably the greatest impact of COVID on South Sudan, is the fact that for 2 years, no child got to school. Now, let me elaborate on that. That's not just an education. That's not just being able to go to school and get educated. That's also a school meal every day. For many of those children, that school meal is the only balanced, nutritious meal that they get every day. Okay. So it wasn't just the loss of access to education, it was the loss of the school meal. Okay. It was also the increase in negative coping mechanisms for livelihood and to survive. Okay. And we've got statistics that show how dramatically we can delay the age at which young African girls get married by just keeping them in school. Okay. And how impactful a school meal is to keeping them in school, plus many other things, separate latrines and good teachers and all of these things. And so, it really hit me what an impact COVID had in that way. COVID impacted us as an organization, but it also showed us our greatest strength. And that is what I was talking to earlier of ForAfrika being a part of the community, in that community. So when things got locked down, we still had teams all over the continent active in almost all of our communities because they're based there. They're part of the community. And so we could continue helping those communities, delivering service. We were able to, in many places, of course, be essential service, so we could still keep our delivery pipelines open. The broader challenges are many. I mean, you mentioned funding, and funding is a big challenge for us. I mean, we're constantly looking for new funding partners, looking to grow our funding. We have an incredible admiration, respect, and appreciation for every single donor to our organization, but we need more of those. And we're looking for people, we say, who love Africa and trust us. Okay. Because when we bring those two things together, then we can really achieve impact. So funding is a huge one. Another one is of course the challenges of the environments we work in. You know, we lost 2 staff this year to conflict. We've had many other staff that have been wounded or injured or displaced. Okay, because we don't leave communities. So in the most challenging times, we're there, and sometimes our staff end up, you know, in the direct line of fire, and so you know that is a massive challenge for us. The safety and security of our staff. That's the thing. I've got to be honest. Internally, that keeps me awake most at night as the CEO. Is the safety and well-being of our staff, the quality of the compounds that they stay in, and you know that sort of thing is really critical to us. So another big challenge, logistics. I mean, we are a giant logistics operation. And many times our trucks are, because part of what makes us unique is we put down infrastructure because we're there to stay. So we build warehouses and we build up trucking fleets, and you know but many times our trucks are driving down riverbeds, not on roads, because the infrastructure isn't there. Okay. And flooding comes, and we have to shift from using trucks to using our boats and barges to be able to move food around. And, you know, so the lack of infrastructure in many countries is quite challenging. Climate change, huge. I mean, I understand that, you know, there's different terminologies here, and you've got to be careful with the words we use because these words have become politicized in some ways. And I don't say them in that context at all. But what we have seen is we have seen significant changes in weather. So we have seen the worst flooding in recorded history in certain parts of our continent, and the worst protracted droughts in recorded history in other parts of our continent. So label it whatever you want to label it. The weather has changed in those areas. Well, what does that mean? That means that families that were sustainably providing for themselves through farming efforts have lost everything because they don't have irrigation and they haven't had any rainfall. Some farmers in Angola told me 5 years. One woman said to me, a successful farmer who was feeding her family, she said, for 5 years, I haven't had a crop. She said, because there's been no rain. She said, I used to be able to feed my family. She said, now I bring my children in early in the evening and close the door so that they don't have to see the other children in the neighborhood eating, because many days we don't eat even one meal a day. I mean, that is the impact. You know, let's not argue about terminology or political terms here. Let's just talk about reality. That is a devastating story. This is not a lady who wants a handout. This is a lady who was providing for her family. The change in weather means she can't do that anymore. Okay. And the same for the, you know, close to 1 million people have been displaced by flooding just in South Sudan alone. Okay. And so the changes in weather have become a significant challenge for us to overcome, but we're overcoming it. Why? Because we're African and we use our intuition and we develop local solutions, and we say, okay, how do we develop, you know, climate sensitive is a fancy word, but actually what it means is how do we come up with a solution that overcomes this challenge of drought or flooding? Or so interestingly enough, some places in South Sudan where we were growing maize before, we're now growing rice because the flood that's happening every year now is a natural irrigator for rice fields. So we've started growing rice in South Sudan. Now, people say, oh, well, can that be successful and does it work? And well, I say South Sudan and people picture broken, war-torn, new country trying to develop, da, 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 da. Well, let me give you this answer. We have over 7,000 hectares of agriculture in South Sudan. Rice, wheat,
That is
maize, sorghum,
incredible. That is
vegetables. Okay,
incredible, Isaac.
this can be done.
My last question to you is, how can people help you? How do people get involved? If our listeners are so moved, which I know they will be, how can they get involved in helping you?
So, number one, if you're African, tell the right story of Africa. Let's be proud of our continent. Let's share, let's be honest, but let's share the power of the spirit we've been talking about today. Let's share why Africa is actually already the greatest continent on earth. Okay. Let's share about our resilience. Let's share about the positive things of our continent. And I'm not an ostrich. My head's not in the sand. I'm not saying deny the negatives. Okay. Let's talk about those too. Let's talk about how we overcome corruption and how we face our infrastructure challenges and. But let's also tell the positive stories of our continent and the power of our people. Let's dream our dreams out loud.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that's number one.
Yes.
Number two,
Yes. Wow.
ForAfrika with a K. So FOR Africa with a K .org. Okay. Jump on that website. There's many ways to get involved. Make contact with us if you want to partner with us. If you want to just personally make a donation, you can do that right there on that website. We're a registered nonprofit in many places in the world. So most places you'll get your tax deduction as well. So jump on forafrica.org and you could do that, or you could get in contact with us to partner up. Trusts, foundations, entities like that, groups that want to say, hey, I'd like to be more deeply involved in transformation of a community and then multiple communities. Reach out to us. We would love to have that conversation with you. We would love to partner up with you, whether that's in Africa actually doing the work or whether that's basically fulfilling or being the extension of your love and investment into Africa. We would love to be that.
Isaac, thank you. You are such an inspiration. Your team, everything that ForAfrika is doing, it's such a privilege hearing it, and we look forward to getting people to get to do engage and tell that story. And to your point about Africans sharing the positive, Isaac, only we can tell our own story. Only we can tell our own story, and we become however we are portrayed. If we allow others to tell those stories, then you have that negativity around the proverbial dark continent. So, people like you, people who are constantly sharing the good, there is good, and there is good work being done, and there is impact. And I'm so happy to hear of all the impact that ForAfrika is doing. Thank you for joining me.
No,
And I
thank you
wish
so
you all
much.
the
We
best.
appreciate you sharing the message.
Absolutely. Isaac's organization ForAfrika reached 3.1 million people across 8 countries in 2022. They boosted food security for over 800,000 people. Thanks to them, 8.2 million kilograms of food were distributed. They helped serve over 17 million meals and supported over 17,000 household gardens. These are the statistics that redefine the African experience. We need more organizations like them to help more communities thrive. We need more change agents like Isaac and his incredible team working to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, we need 1 million Florences. Credo Voices, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious and keep believing in the power of your voice. This is Awele Okibo, signing off for Credo Voices.